Close your eyes. Allow the experience. If there is resistance to whatever you experience or you enjoy it, doesn't matter. You allow the experience of this moment to be as it is. And all these ideas, all these concepts of the situation of your life, what is happening later, all that, leave that for now. And look at the actuality of the present. And if there are a lot of thoughts, just allow them. You're just resting as the quiet awareness. As a witness to this experience. It's easy to mistake the content of the experience as you might think that it relates to you. But you are the space. You are the space in which everything unfolds. You are the stillness itself. And in that sense, there is no beginning to you. There is no end. And as you stay here, you notice the transient nature of everything. How every thought and feeling and all the other phenomena that come into your field of consciousness how they stay for a while and then go. Everything in your experience always falls back into the self, into the silence. Even the idea of yourself comes, stays for a while, and falls back into this. So recognize the natural state of being. It's not an intellectual attitude. It's not a philosophy. It's not a belief. It is so simple, and yet so challenging. That is the paradox of beingness. what is the natural state. What happens when you're not touching any thought? When you no longer force or try, and just stay as you are. Open your eyes, move your body. If you read articles on meditation, people will gladly list benefits of meditation. 10 benefits of meditation. And it sounds like you're gaining something. But if you do, then the mind grabs every part of it. It makes it into a concept. Because all meditation does, if you really rest as you are, is that you lose the rigidness of identification. But that just means that you see what you are not. So the question is that really a benefit? Is that the thing that you gained? Or are you just going to your natural state? It can sound like a play with semantics, like a play with words. But the view of it is not gains. You lose things. And that gives the mind space. And we have to understand that the egoic mind thrives on identification and desiring things. That's very much the motivation of everything that comes from the egoic mind. So, if you deprive the egoic mind from that, it will resist. Because it's completely addicted to the idea of a person. It's the actual, real addiction, not all the external things that we talk about as addiction. The addiction is the egoic mind, the sense of I. Coming back to it, feeling to be in control of it. All this. But what we do in actuality when we play around with the egoic mind is that we just meddle with things. We're forcing, resisting, trying to make our life to be like the idea we have of it. And this is not always conscious. Sometimes it's just ideas that come with the package, that come from our parents or our environment, or that we're not conscious, that we're comparing. And suddenly we're there. And in that, we meddle. We get involved with our thoughts. We try to solve things. We try to fix ourselves. But what it does in actuality is that it just stirs up more thoughts. And for a mind that has done that all its life, a thought comes and you have to try to counteract that thought and all this play. It feels very counterintuitive to just not do anything. For many people, the first sense of that is just that it's wrong. That I'm either not caring about myself or others, or all these thoughts can come. And as you know, I always want to be very honest with you, because I think there's a lot of sugarcoating of meditation going on. This is why meditation is difficult, because you're addicted to the idea of yourself. And that is the strongest addiction that we have. It is the basis for all other addictions. But that also makes it the root of all addictions. And also a great possibility of freedom. Freedom is a strange thing, because you might feel bound, but you don't really know exactly what freedom is. Can you follow me? You have a sense that there is a limitation put upon you, but you might not have the sense what the freedom could be. It has a sense of the unknown to it. A sense of chaos, maybe, even. And very surprising in the human experience is that freedom is not an external thing. Because I think most of us have learned that it is. That the right set of circumstances, then you're free. But the experience of freedom differs a lot. Probably differs a lot in this room. In this Sangha. And maybe it can differ from day to day. But the danger with projecting it as an outside experience, and that certain things have to come to pass for you to feel free, is that it is a very strong belief and a very strong limitation. Freedom comes in the relationship to your thoughts and feelings and your experience. If you allow the present moment completely, you are free. If you meet every moment as if you had chosen it, you are free. But the identified mind compares, expects, has hope, has despair. All these things in time that creates a parallel world of belief to the present. And then that is what we call duality. And when we just look at it very logically, it is absurd. Why would the experience be split in two? It's more logical that it is one. But we just have these old patterns and just continue them. And if they're never questioned, if they're never explored, then it just continues. And meditation allows us to look at these things directly, to make the unconscious conscious. to understand that there's very little difference between the unconscious and the conscious. It is so close. The unconscious is so close to be conscious. It's just your sincerity, being with the moment, inviting it instead of resisting it. And a good way is to contemplate on these things. Just look at your own idea of freedom. What is it? What do you think you need for it? All the projections, all the beliefs around it. And see what kind of beliefs that seem to stick with you. Don't make a superficial explanation that is in line with Vedanta or something like that. Look what's really going on. How does the I thought connect with you time and time again? What does it hook you on? What takes you out of this moment? Because if you practice and have your sadhana, you will experience many moments of just being here very naturally. And sometimes you just feel like you fell out of it and you didn't really know what happens. You got overwhelmed in a situation, perhaps interacting with other people, which is usually the most difficult one. Stay away from identification. And you lose yourself again. And you have to suffer all the play of unconsciousness again. Go on the emotional roller coaster, all this. But when you stay with the things that comes and goes in your mind, you will start to notice the things that trigger you. And they can be so simple, and so they feel so ordinary. They feel just like a normal thought. Because that is what unconsciousness does with it. It just normalizes identification. That's why it's so difficult for most people to see the thoughts that they identify with. Because that is just your normal thought. An innocent thought, you think. A thought like, oh, today is a good day. And it refers to someone. And then you're done. You're so happy about your good day. You see all the things, all the beliefs that connect to your good day. But your good day lays the groundwork for the idea of a bad day. And it creates a belief of these are the premises for a good day. It's so ordinary, right? It's like the most normal thought. And it creates desire, and it creates aversion. And the mind might even say things like, I would like more days to be like this. And again, it just strengthens the identification with it. That this experience is happening to a someone that wants good days. But I'm sometimes hesitant by being so detailed with these things, because I know that the problem is that you might catch it and you might create another belief that is the idea of I should not care about good or bad days. And you make this whole philosophy about it and you go around telling other people about it. Because it's about understanding the mechanics. It's not the content. Can you follow that? Because this seems to be a thing that most people miss. They hear something, it sounds good, logical, I like it, I make my own belief out of it. But more important is just to question and be aware whenever the idea of an I comes. And if you question it, it will sometimes make you feel confused. It will feel disorienting because you usually also put your stability into the idea of I. You categorize it and you compartmentalize it, and then you know what it is. And you feel safe for a while. So for the egoic mind, this is not a nice behavior. It can also feel counterintuitive. But as soon as you notice, if you don't put yourself in that box or stick that thing to you, there is space. And if you stay with that space, you will notice that it is very, it feels very grounded, it feels very free, and it feels very unidentified. And when those things start to seem like positive things, that is when meditation deepens. And you could say it's a little bit like being in a very small boat on a big ocean. And something starts to rock the boat. It feels super scary. And the worst thing would be to go into this deep, moving water. But the secret is that you are not a person. You are also the water. So it's a ridiculous play. The fear of the shaking of the boat is just the idea that you are going to be lost. But you are the waves. practice has to come from you. You cannot take it in as an idea that comes from something external. I cannot check you. I cannot go inside your mind and do anything. It might depend on your definition of things, though. Silence is universal. It moves everywhere. If your mind is silent, other people can relax. There is the possibility for it. It's not automatically happening. If the person is too caught by their thoughts, they will not experience the silence. But if there is any openness, you will be drawn into it. It's difficult to explain to someone who has not experienced it. But if you have experienced being with someone who is silent, you just know. See if you can be with whatever comes. All the things that you don't like. Can you? What is beyond the obstacles? What is beyond the feeling of tightness, of an emotion, tension in the body? What happens when you stay? Will you be afraid that it consumes you? That it's too much? See if you can stay. Even if the mind wants something else, it might squirm. Beyond every experience, if there is full allowance of it, full acceptance, you will always come to peace. But usually you've been resisting so long, so you don't know what it is to not resist. But the beauty of the silence within you is that it shows you. All that tension that has been there for so long has the possibility to leave. Just through simple awareness and acceptance. You can call it that, or you can call it surrender. You can call it giving yourself to God. Whatever you like to call it. You can call it love. Drowning in unconditional love. Sometimes it feels overwhelming. Sometimes it feels too much. That's usually close to the breaking point. The stillness within us holds us all like the care of a loving parent and a baby. We're all held. this letting go often comes with tears. And spaciousness. The beauty of surrender. It's not so much an intellectual understanding. It is just to follow the stillness. See what it shows you. See what happens if you let go. All the fears you might have, losing yourself, becoming less. The egoic mind hates becoming less. It will resist a little. But in stop being this identified idea, there is space. Instead of this thought trance that most people are taken with, it just becomes the natural presence of being here. The natural love of this moment. There is nothing to fear but fear itself. And that is just part of the idea of the person. You are free. You are this present moment. Your awareness and the content of awareness. You are the intimacy of this moment. And what is even intimacy if there is no other? Everyone talks about the experiences of being present like the most amazing experiences that happen to them when they lose the sense of self. But this is your nature. And when you notice this deep silence, and you try to describe it to someone, you would say things like, "This silence is overwhelming." How is that possible? How can a silence be overwhelming? But it can. The beauty of this moment. The playfulness in that silence. The presence. It is nothing, but it contains everything. How is that possible? That is the foundation of what it is to be. Is it a method? Is it a technique? It just is. Is it the words that makes it possible to understand this? No, it's the reflection. That you see the silence in yourself. If this was a thing merely through the intellect, you would react very differently. But I am not talking to your mind. I'm talking to your heart. I'm talking to the silence within you. So if there is openness, that is what you listen to. I'm not telling anyone how to live your life. You're free to do whatever you like. But if you have touched the stillness, if you have touched your natural state, you will understand that if I care about this or not, it will still be the same. And you can call it whatever you like. You can call it non-dual meditation. You can call it Vedanta. You can call it my relationship with God. Whatever you like. And it's not different in any way, indifferent if you have a different religion. This is still the same. If you come from a Hindu background, you must call it Krishna consciousness or Krishna, Shiva. And in the Christian traditions, they would say Christ consciousness. But the words doesn't matter. Awareness is always the same. Is there any questions today? Who wants to ask them?
Maybe ask. When you get ready for your I notice going through some sort of personal things now, that when it's funny because in this understanding, I feel like I have so much more capacity to sort of just be with difficult feelings or just like let them arise and just be alone and silent, and something I've always struggled with before. And I've sort of given myself this amazing gift, or had this realization that I can actually, this is fine, I can just be with this and it will be fine. But I've always had good friends I can talk to as well during difficult times. And I find it's like I have less in common now with these people who maybe don't meditate or haven't really been interested in these things. So I'm sure lots of other people have experienced this. I'm sure it's not uncommon, but I sort of feel like I sort of am more happy in myself, and that I can, be with, like I say, be with these things, but looking to sort of others for more support, or just in general speaking with others about these kind of things. I find that it's sort of slightly alienating as well, if you understand what I mean.
Yes, it can have the opposite effect.
And even though I think before I was much more reliant on other people, and then now I have much more capacity in myself, and certain things don't really scare me so much as they used to, but still I still have a desire and a longing to connect with other people. But I find with some of my friends, maybe less so with others, but with some of them it's like it's like seeing them or visiting them, talking about it, I feel like, and I need to just go home and be by myself. like, why did I meet them or something?
Yes. There is because, and also one of the difficult things with the egoic mind is that the egoic mind creates these habits around you. So, and like many people, they connect with other people through just telling what I feel miserable about and what you feel miserable about, and you connect. That is a very common thing. And as you notice the stillness within you and you find calm in that, you won't be so prone to those things, because you just have a feeling that they create separation in you. So it has went from being a very validating thing on that surface level, and then that gets lost because it becomes much more important to just be as you are and not fragment yourself. But this is also the difficulty with identification, because we validate each other through identification. So we get dependent on others, and many friendships are based on that. And when people say, I don't feel like I have anything common with my friends anymore, it is because the things that you had in common were things like that. That creates fragmentation, and if you lose interest in that, then you also lose interest in those friendships. And then you can have other friendships and that has a much deeper basis, but you perhaps didn't understand that. You might have known them since you were a kid, and you have very deep spiritual connection with them, but you never talk about obvious spiritual stuff. But there's a deep, usually very deep acceptance, very deep love, and very deep understanding. And it feels like this person would love me whatever I would do in my, this kind of. And that I would say is much more spiritual relationship, even though you might never have a conversation about spirituality. But there is a deep love and there's a connectedness that is very natural with those people, those friends. And I know that it is easy to worry if you have a lot of ideas of how you should relate to your friends. Some are very rigid in their ideas with that, so then it would be very difficult also to let some friends go if there's that has to happen. It feels like you're betraying them, or all this. It can feel strange. And a very common fear in spirituality is also the feeling that it can feel like you're leaving people behind. And that can also include like the people that are very close to you, like your parents or siblings or whatever. And it feels like if I continue with this, they won't understand me anymore. We won't really connect on the same level because they won't be with me in this. And that can also feel very scary. But many of us have so many ideas of what it is to be not alone, and what that should entail. But in a sense, you're completely alone, but everything is also connected. So it's a strange paradox of that. And that I remember when I first started meditation, really just like a friend that I wish I'd had a friend that was, I all the time thought that, I wish I had a friend that was into like exactly the same things that I could share it with someone like that. But the more I practice, the more I understand that it's not like that. You can never bring anyone into that, really. Not in that sense, not in that dual sense. It is like the dual is really in an external way trying to find a unity. And it expresses itself in so many ways also in romantic relationships. Some people refer to their partner as their other half. That is the completeness of the experience, is that you have someone else. And that is also an externalization of that. But in a sense, spirituality is is something that you do alone. But as you have noticed, to have a sangha, to have a group of people around you that are doing the same thing is very helpful. And it just feels like it just creates an easiness in all of it. And they don't have to say anything. You can come here and not speak a word to them, and you still feel like you feel 100% supported and loved. It's such a simple and beautiful way of being supported.
I really feel that about satsang now, that it's like a little community. It's a really nice feeling. And it's for me, it's this idea of being alone, the loneliness that's always been like my challenge. And I see that my way, that's been such a powerful tool for me to sort of burn away some of the ego, just by like, just come on then, just be alone, see what happens. And then always just realizing that, it's fine. But it's like I can see exactly what you mean about pulling away, and I can see that with my family. And I haven't lived in the same country as my family for like 20 years. And for me, it seems like a positive thing to have some distance to them. I can see very clearly a lot of dynamics there which affected me. So that seems like a very natural thing for me. I'm not scared of that, but I am scared about my friends. And in particular, I have like a best friend here who I really bonded with over being like dumped at the same time, and we really bonded over this sort of identity we had. And I can sort of see exactly as you described this, like bonding over like trauma to the individual, and really kind of, keep feeding each other's ego with that kind of thing, and just that it's changing now, and I realize it's just ego grasping for like no, stay, and I know it just has to happen naturally, but it's like a sort of, it's a scary thing.
Yes, but and you will be surprised sometimes, because also the effect of this change can also make some of your relationships completely change. That they have to be renewed in a way, because the old ways doesn't work, and maybe the other person also has that feeling. So it's not so. I just want to. My point is that it's just not so simple always, and how people are around you is very much because of how you are. And you probably noticed if you're with someone a lot, with one person a lot, and there comes a third person and just starts to talk to the both of you, the dynamics and what you talk about completely changes. And that person that you know everything about, it feels like, because you spent so much time with them, just says completely new things. Because the context changes. So it's so easy to be locked into that and think that the world is from my standpoint. And when you get perspective on that, and when you change, the world changes. Because you don't realize the small things that you do also. If you start to become very relaxed, you very easily smile to people, for example. And perhaps you're not a very smiling person, and you're completely surprised that the cashier at ICA or the supermarket is smiling to you and say, "Have a nice day," very, very lovingly. And you're like, "Oh, people are so nice nowadays." All these things are there. It's so easy to be locked into your own world, and that you project all that. And if you're unconscious of it, it will just the universe will just stir those things up until you get it. That's what I mean when I say that the universe conspires with you. It really wants to show you all those things. All the things that you are unconscious of, it brings them up. It manifests in conflicts and things that you're afraid of, and in your worst fears, all these things, if they manifest. Oh, you have to come closer.
I just wanted to share a study that I read kind of on this theme. It was about people who perceive themselves as lucky and people who perceive themselves as unlucky. And they set up this little scene when they were going to go in and buy a cup of coffee. And they hid like $1 next to the door. And the people who consider themselves lucky, they found the $1. Because they were more present and observed whatever was going on in their surrounding, whether the people who considered themselves unlucky didn't find it because they were kind of stuck in their head.
Yes.
Yeah, and that is like what you just said, that how you are present in the world is how you perceive the world, I guess, also.
Yes. And I think these things are subtle enough so that people think that it's just, and it's very common in, like, if you have a group of friends, that someone is the really unlucky one. But that same person is also like always tipping things over and all these things, because it's so much in their head. So, yes. When people tell me that they're very unlucky with things, I feel that it mainly comes from not being aware. And it's not the more you understand the ignorance that is in yourself, the more acceptance you also have with others. If you understand that I couldn't see this at all before, I had no insight, and sometimes I completely lose the perspective still. I'm just trapped in my mind. But the more you are aware of that, the easier it will be if you see someone else and they're completely taken by their mind. You will just feel like, oh, do you understand the hardship of it? You understand the grind that happens with that, and the feeling of being locked in. And the feeling of always keeping your nose above the water. So much struggle. It is such a beautiful thing. That all is needed is the acceptance of the present moment and the awareness of it. And I think that it has nothing to do with luck. Because then that would be a factor. Are you lucky to have come to the teaching of this kind of meditation? Is that luck? Or is it just happening? And how does the teaching affect you? Is that luck? You understand? It's a strange way of looking at things. But the quality of the thing that we call life is always enhanced by awareness. Even if it doesn't feel like that at first, it can feel so harsh. It can feel like looking at yourself and your behaviors and being aware of what you do can feel dark. And can feel like, oh, I'm super toxic. What I refer to in others as toxic, I am that. On all these behaviors, and we understand that, start to understand that if you talk about that you don't like a certain behavior, it's very common that you embody that behavior in some way. And those things, when you get aware of them, can be quite tough to handle. But there is always the beauty of the freedom of being aware. Because when you're aware of them, they will take less space in your life. You won't be so prone to trying to control that because it's not a thing anymore. And I know that people love to say, oh, I'm so done with this thing. But when I hear that, I just hear, okay, so that still affects you. Because otherwise you wouldn't bring it up. Otherwise it wouldn't be a thing. You wouldn't have to say, I am done with that. You don't have to state the things that you are. Do you understand? That just is. It's very obvious when we talk about it like this, but it's not many people go around saying that they are this and that is a projection of what they want or what they aspire to or something like that. And the confusion often happens when we listen to our internal dialogue and think that it is saying something about reality, about truth. Because it's so often just a really nice story. that comforts you, that you want to hear. And notice that about the mind, that it really plays you. You see someone that you find nice, and the mind says, go talk to them. And go talk to them, and it just becomes a very strange situation. And then the mind goes, shouldn't have done that. It just goes in the direction where it can have some space to play for it to be right. And life is much more interesting when it's beyond right or wrong. What is the moment? Is it so important to be right? Or is it so important to put yourself down because you were wrong? What is it really? Look at the whole idea of who it relates to, the identification. And suddenly it's not a thing. Suddenly there is no one. You go to the source of your thoughts and you see if there is a person that it relates to. What is that?
Yeah, I thought about this. When you say something like, I shouldn't have done that, or I hate myself, or something like this, who's talking to whom? I mean, if you say, oh, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have talked to that person, like you say, I should go and talk to that person, but then you're referring to yourself in the third person. But who's referring to whom? I mean, is it the ego referring to an idea of the ego? I got really confused thinking about it.
Yes, that is why we call it duality. But it is a very valid question. Is there many me's? How many me's are there? Who is referring to what? And it's so complicated sometimes. There's so much me in different forms that the mind is referring to.
I'm writing a book about my me's.
Okay. But at the same time, even though the egoic mind has all this complexity, also what is beyond the egoic mind is so simple. So it's not very... I think that sometimes I hear that, yes, oh, you're into this Vedanta thing. That's the thing that's really, really complicated. There's so much to know about it, so many books to know about it. You have to listen to teachers for a long time to understand any of it. And the idea is that it is something that you really have to, like you have to have mathematic formulas in your mind to understand it. But the depth of it is not at all like that. If you contemplate on it, it can feel a bit complex, okay? And the logic of it, all right. But the sense in your heart is so simple. If you are, you are. There's no complexity at all in being. But in the egoic mind, full complexity. Referring to oneself in all kinds of manners. But if you look at the experience, it is not the experience that happens when you say, I hate myself, is the experience of self-loathing. That's it. It doesn't need to have a thing that it's connected to. You don't have to go back to the creating identity from it. There's just this thought of it. There's just the experience. Okay, so there is self-loathing, there is self-hate, the experience of that. Okay. Okay, self-hate, come. Look at all those things, see what they are. And I know that it feels not intuitive to do that at first. If you're not used to that, it doesn't feel intuitive. It feels strange to be with the things that you really don't like. With the feeling of resistance, with the feeling of self-loathing, whatever it is. But as you stay with it, you see that it's just transient. It doesn't belong to anyone. It just moves. And it's just happening. And from that perspective, also the experience, however complicated the mind makes it, is not complicated. It's just that most people are not very used to stepping out of the identification of the mind. And what that means is just to be aware of the thoughts instead of trying to fix them. And when we talk about that, that is like the most basic thing that all meditation traditions talk about. Observe your thoughts. They say that in every every meditation school you would ever come to, they would have some version of that. But the traps with that, from the standpoint of the egoic mind, are so many. That's why we talk about this. So we can create awareness of those obstacles in it. Because it's so easy to be lost in the mind. But the good news is that the more you're with it, the easier it gets. And there comes, for most people, there comes a very quite obvious tipping point where it feels like you have an automatic momentum in meditation. Up to that point, it feels like you're striving to come to meditation, and then meditation starts to come to you. And then it feels like it's much more, it's not so much a thing of effort, it's just, okay, I'm tense again, I just have to relax, and then you're back. But at first it feels like I have to concentrate, I have to find space so I can create enough stability for me to stay. And if you're ambitious, you get headaches because you concentrate so much, and all these things can happen. It's fine. And if you feel like you struggle a lot with it, I just tell you, there will come a point where it will be much more natural and it will feel like you just relax. And meditation is as its most beautiful when it's not an effort anymore. And when you don't feel like you have to strive to keep up your practice and things like that, that it just naturally comes into all things in your life. That the relationships you're interested in is relationships of truth and presence and real intimacy and honesty. All these things will be very natural. And the things you do, they will just, if it feels like you can do things with other people, that is present and that is, then those things will always feel like the things to do. Life is not complicated in that sense. The only complicated thing is the idea of you. That can make it immensely complicated. But life is just unfolding in the present moment. That's it. Yes, there is nothing more to that. All the ideas of who you're going to become or what you have been, or they are just ideas. The only thing is this. And there's actually no difference between you and this. It is the same. Whatever you might think. Okay. Gonna sing something? How many? 5? Any suggestions? No? Sorry? You said at the same time.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Which one did you say?
I said the last one, Sri Radhe. What did you say?
I really like Door of My Heart.
Okay,
Because
so
I
then
haven't
you
heard that.
We can do them both. Jai Jai Shri Radhe, 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 Jai Jai Shri Radhe. 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 Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Wilt thou come, just for once come for me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come for me? Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Before we end, have you heard the story of the father and his son who lives in a village? Some of you have, some of you have not. Okay. It's pertaining to luck. There is a father and his son. They live in a village. A small village. They have a horse, and they use the horse to plow the fields. And one day the son is plowing the fields, and the horse gets spooked somehow by a small animal and kicks the son and breaks his arm. In the evening, the whole village gathers, comes to the father and says, "Such bad luck. You have only one child, only one son, and now he's broken his arm. Who is going to tend to the fields?" And the father says, "Good or bad, who knows?" 1 week later, the king's army's men comes past the village, takes all the eligible young men to join their army and to go into the war. But they see the son with the broken arm and they say, "Okay, we don't want to draft you." In the evening, the village comes to the father and says, "Such luck that your son broke his arm, so he wasn't drawn into this terrible war, and now you can still have your crops and tend to the fields." And sometime later, the father and the son comes out to tend to the fields, and the horse has gotten loose and ran away. The villagers come to the father. They say, "Such bad luck." And a few days later, they look for the horse, they cannot find him. A few days later, the horse comes back with 4 other horses, 4 other wild horses. They rein in the horses, and now they have 5 horses. The village comes and says, "Such luck." And the father says, "Good or bad, who knows?" And this is just a story to emphasize what happens to you and what is your biggest miseries and what your biggest challenges might be the most beautiful thing that happened. And there are so many people who have said things like, when they come into a great crisis, "This is the best thing that happens to me. I changed my priorities in my life. I started to live life more seriously and in a way that is more aligned with what I love and what I really want." And as we stay as awareness and we start to have a more balanced outlook on things, they will not automatically be good or bad. And we don't have to fall into the traps of that and play that game.